Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share some ideas. So today we're going to be talking about creating cities. I think that most have translation. Okay, I hope to speak slowly enough. So we're going to be talking about cities. You know, cities are so good because we meet each other, we help from each other, and around the world, people are living in cities. You know, already more than half of the people in the world live in cities. Even this girl doesn't want to see because some people are crammed on a bus. Some are wealthy, some are poor. But people come to the cities because in cities there are more opportunities. And when we talk about cities, we also talk about people. And in cities, it does not matter if the city has 10,000 people, or if the city has 1 million, or 14 million. I know that in your organization, in your association, you have cities of 2,000 people and cities of 15 million people. The problems are the same. The solutions are different. In the city of 2,000 people, we are living longer. In the city of 15 million, we are also living longer. In the city of 2,000 people, if you are 10 years old, you don't drive a car. In the city of 15 million, also you don't drive a car. So in both you need public transit. Maybe in the city of 2,000 people, you need 4 or 5 buses. In the city of 15 million, maybe you need trains. So the solutions are different, but the problems are similar. And we can learn from each other. Turkey is very urban. This is how Turkey has been growing in the last 55 years. All the urban. It used to be about 3 out of 10 people. 3 out of 10 used to live in cities. And now it has gone from 30 out of 100 to 74. So just in 1960, 30 out of 100 people in Turkey live in cities. Now 75 out of 100 live in cities. And this can be very positive because sometimes in cities it's easy to provide the services of health and education and mobility. And that's why also people come to the cities, because people are not dumb. They realize that they might have a better future for their children. And what is the best attraction in any city? This is people. So we're working in cities and people. On Friday morning or Thursday, I was working in Malmo. Malmo is a city of 200,000 people. They lost half of the jobs in 2 years. They were shipyards. They went to South Korea, and in order to reinvent themselves, a big issue was the public spaces and the children and the families, and they also have huge immigration from many places. So when we talk about cities in general, the population is growing. And in some places we have public health problems, physical, emotional. We also have urban growth around the world. Half of the population in the world live in cities. By the end of this century, it will be over 80%. And we're living longer. Look, this is so interesting. All of these are the countries in the world. This is the life expectancy. We have been around for 200,000 years. But in the last 200 years ago, we didn't have any country with a life expectancy above 45. Today, we don't have any country with a life expectancy below 45. In only 200 years, we have totally changed. Also, we are having issues such as climate change, and we see symptoms everywhere, even if some people don't want to believe. So there is an urgency to act, and we need to decide how do we want to live. Once we decide how do we want to live, a lot of the other decisions become easy. Today, this morning, I'm going to be talking about sustainable mobility, and when I'm talking about sustainable mobility, I'm talking about people walking and riding bicycles and using public transit and new uses of cars. By the way, walking and biking is not a joke. Walking and riding bicycles, it could be something very enjoyable and very safe for everyone in Turkey. Walking and cycling is not a frivolity. Walking and cycling is the only individual mode of mobility for most people. Walking and cycling is the only individual mode of mobility for all children and youth. You might be the son or the daughter of the wealthiest person in Istanbul. If you are under 16, your only individual mode of mobility is to walk or to bike. So having safe and enjoyable walking and cycling should be almost like a human right. Unless you think that only the people that have the money and the age and the desire to have a car have a right to individual mobility. That's what we're also talking about democracy and human rights and equality and sustainability, because everything is linked to everything. And today I'm also going to be talking about parks and public spaces. And I ask you, is walking and cycling and parks and streets and sidewalks, is it important? It's not so obvious. For us it might be, but it's not so obvious. I have worked in more than 350 different cities all over the world, small ones, big ones, in every continent. And when I show them these playgrounds or these sidewalks, they say, oh, Gil, go do some fundraising. Get donations. But when I show them a pothole, oh my God, they go crazy about potholes. They think that maybe a car is going to fall there. And the media plays into this. The media, this TV station, hire a woman. All she does is goes and measures potholes and has a section on television, Tuesdays and Fridays. And the citizens, they get organized to pressure the government about potholes. Not about playgrounds, not about sidewalks. And when they take care of the potholes, they go and celebrate. Why? Why is the pothole more important? Maybe it's because when we look at our city from the air, the biggest public space, the biggest space that belongs to all of us, rich, poor, young, old, fat, skinny, the public space are the streets. The streets are about 1/3 of our city. And we know that when we walk, that when we ride bicycles, we take public transit, the use of space is a lot more efficient. So we need to decide, in Turkey, are we going to build streets for cars or streets for people? Because we can do one or the other. Do we want our streets to look like car storage or actually help build community? You know, this is very important because, for example, here there used to be a river going by 50 years ago. And 50 years ago, people were saying efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. That was 50 years ago. So what did they do? They built a road on top of it. But now people, the world is more globalized. And the people now, they can live anywhere they want to. So people, the reality is that the best people can live anywhere. However you define best, it can be the best medical doctor, it can be the best engineer, the best architect, it can be the best person making coffee, the best person playing music. If I'm a good carpenter, I can live anywhere. So where am I going to live? Wherever me and my family have good quality of life. So each one of your municipalities, every day you must wake up thinking, how can we retain our best people? How can we attract the best people? And these municipalities said, can we go to Turkey and get the best people to come and live here? Probably not. So someone said 8 years ago, hey, wasn't there a river going down? And 8 years ago, they brought it up. So you want to live in this city? That is how it is now, or this is how it was. Same street, same stores, but it's totally different ambience. Because it's about how to attract and retain the best people. And sometimes people say, Gil, what's the definition of a good city? I said, a good city is one where I want to sleep at home, but I want to live outside. So the outdoor places must be great. That's why I'm really thankful to having been invited with all of you at Marmara, and with the Van Leer Foundation and Urban 95. So today we're going to be talking about vibrant cities and healthy communities. And I want to place emphasis on equity and public health. But before, to put things into context, I want to talk a little bit about Bogota and 880 cities. And I'm going to end with 8 messages in Marmara. Okay? So let me tell you about Bogota. Obviously, it's not the ideal city. But In my previous life, now I live in Toronto. In my previous life, I lived in Bogota, and I was commissioner. And one of the things that I learned working for the government with the mayor was that it's not about the money. People say, whenever you say, oh, let's do something good for people walking, oh, we don't have money. Let's do a park, we don't have money. And then you see they are doing elevated roads, they are doing flyovers. So there is money, but where is the priorities? Also, I've been doing, for example, we did over 200 parks in one term. We did parks all over the city, small ones, big ones. This was one of them. The Pope came here, there was a mass for 1 million people, and then he left, and nothing happened. There were not even sidewalks, nothing happened in 27 years. Why nothing happened in 27 years? Because change is hard. Change is hard in Marmara, change is hard in any of the municipalities of the 100. Change is hard in Copenhagen or in Bogota or in New York. Change is hard everywhere because you try to change and the cave people show up. Who are the cave? They are the citizens against virtually everything you try to do, and they come out to oppose. But you need to be a champion at finding solutions to the problems. Not at finding problems to the solutions. It's about getting things done. It's not about having 20 excuses why things cannot be done. No, it's about finding the solution. How to find that little crack through the window and run through it. So this park was like this for 27 years. And in 4 years we turned it into the nicest park. For active, for passive, for contemplative recreation, for things that people can do at their own pace and at their own time. Sometimes people just want to go and run by themselves. But it's not just about football fields. We need also passive recreation. Listen to the birds, see the flowers, and enjoy nature. Sometimes we're going to be with many other people doing activities. So it's a little bit about combination, and I'm going to talk a little more about the uses and activities a little bit afterwards. But the parks are critical. And sometimes people say, Gil, why do parks when the poor people have so many needs? Well, because if you really care about poor people, when the poor people feel miserable, when the poor people feel really, really bad, it's in the leisure time. When people are working, the president of the bank or the minimum wage worker cleaning floors has a similar experience. Maybe the president of the bank has more anxiety and more pressure. But in the leisure time, the president of the bank has restaurants and theater and clubs and travels. The minimum wage worker doesn't. So if we improve the use of the leisure time to the low-income people, we're improving quality of life. Something else we did, and you just told me you were in Bogota and you enjoyed the ciclovia. I found a small program of a few kilometers, and we turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. Sunday mornings, we pop it up and people come out, young and old and rich and poor. How do we do it? You open your streets to people, you close them to cars, and the magic happens. All of that. We have 121 kilometers. All of these are the incomes, the different levels of income. I was obsessed that we would connect the whole city so that the wealthiest people and the poorest people were interconnected. And we also connected some of the main parks so that people could go to them. And you see young and old and rich and poor. People of all ages. Some people walk, some people bike, some people run. But others want to do other activities. So along the road we do aerobics and Tai Chi and cha-cha-cha, anything but all related to physical activity. And it's something that works for everyone, and it works in cities of 2,000 people, 100,000, 20 million like Mexico City. Who comes? Everybody. All you need is 2 feet, a heartbeat, and you're going to be there. We get every Sunday about 1.7 million people. So 1 out of every 4 citizens, they come out. And why is this important? Because it changes minds. All of a sudden we realize that the streets are public space. They belong to all of us. And they can have different uses according to the time of the day of the week of the year, and it has become like a positive virus. Now we see it everywhere. Who would have thought the city of angels and cars? Now they got their own ciclovia. And it has been working in cities of 10,000 or 100,000. It works everywhere. New York, they have their own. It's about social integration. That's why we are working also in Johannesburg and Cape Town. You know, India didn't have any till 5 years ago or 7 years ago. Now they have 70, and it's working very, very well. It might be different activities, but all of it is around the physical activity. Paris, they used to have this idea on only 1 month of the year, in the summer. And they said, well, if it works in the summer, why don't we do it all year round? And now Paris turned it from the summer to all year round. And they have their own open streets. Some countries call it ciclovia, others call it open streets, different names, but it's the same. Every Sunday of the year, Paris, in the summer, in the winter, all the time. This is important because we meet each other as equals, and that is very powerful. This is the only place where in cities, in Bogota, we met the wealthiest people, the presidents of the corporation, the spouses and children, doing the same activity as their minimum wage worker, the spouses and children. After I was commissioner, one of my brothers became mayor, and this is what the Japanese corporation agency were saying. Do elevated highways. Fortunately, he said, no. This is what it used to be. All the cars used to park on the sidewalks. Horrible. It was a huge fight to get the cars out of the sidewalks to the side. Are the sidewalks for cars or for people? The sidewalks are so critical and so important. And bus rapid transit, like the one you have here in Istanbul on the highway towards the airport, this used to be transportation. Now this is what he led. A whole revolution of creating buses with dedicated lanes. What makes transit go fast is not if the wheels are metal or rubber, it's if they have dedicated lanes. Once you have dedicated lanes, then it moves. 280 kilometers of protected bikeways. In 3 years, this is doable. Bogota is a poor city, and nevertheless, it did, and it went from a few thousand to 500,000 people riding bikes, always separating pedestrians and cyclists, and creating a grid. It's very important to create a grid. Some of the neighborhoods were so poor that it's hard for you to imagine the levels of poverty. And look how it was transformed. He led a revolution of great sidewalks and bikeways. Why do we need good quality sidewalks, good quality bikeways? Because it's going to be safer, but also because we need to dignify the pedestrian. We need to dignify the cyclist, and that is just as important. And when I say it's not an issue of money, it's an issue of priorities. There was money either to walk and bike or to do the streets. And then he said, let's do the streets in a future administration. So it's about priorities. It's about transforming. It's about being consistent between what you think, what you say, and what you do. And when I'm talking this morning about people walking, I'm talking about anybody moving at the speed of the pedestrian. But let's move from Bogota, because now I run 2 organizations. I'm the founder and chair of 880 Cities, and the chair of World Urban Parks. And this is the tweet if anybody wants to make comments. And I have been lucky to work in many, many cities. World Urban Parks, and it would be nice if all the municipalities, the 190 became members, or the organization as an association, to share, to learn, because one thing that I love about your organization, that you have 190 members. Everybody can learn from everybody. And also you can show other people in the world how to do things, and other people can tell you how to do it. So that is the reason of World Urban Parks. It's exchanging ideas, and that's why we also have certificates on parks management, and we have conferences. Next month is in Melbourne. Next year there's one in Mexico. There's Redder and Greener is in Denver. Probably going to be the best city parks conference in North America. We have committees, for example, on children, play and nature, on older adults, on healthy parks, healthy cities. If you want any more information, it's worldurbanparks.org. But every time I go places, they say, Gil, what's 880 cities? Well, 880 cities is really not about walking or cycling or parks or streets. Those are the means, not the end. The end is how are we going to help create successful cities. And I like to go and see the venue where I'm going to speak the day before. The other day I was in Warsaw, and then I went to see the night before, and people are dancing, and I said, oh my God, how am I going to compete the next morning? And then I saw the DJ Vika. We're living longer. We're living longer. It's great. So it's about that. It's about successful cities where we are going to have healthy communities, and people are going to be happier. And all the time, people are saying, Gil, is this intersection safe? Can my children walk to school? Can my grandparents ride their bicycle to get eggs or milk? Look, you don't have to be a transportation engineer. No. 3 simple rules. We call it rule of common sense. Unfortunately, common sense usually is the least common of the senses. 3 steps. Step number 1, think of a child that you love. Someone around 8 years old, your son, your daughter, brothers, sisters. Can be anyone around 8. Can be standing up, can be heads down. Once you have the child in your mind, step number 2, think about an 80-year-old that you love. Your parents, your grandparents, brothers, sisters. And when you have the child and you have the older adult, step number 3, would you send them walking to school? Would you send them across that intersection? Would you send them walking to take public transit? Riding a bike to get eggs or milk? Would they feel safe? If you would, it's because it's safe enough. If you would not, it's because it's not, and we gotta do it better. What if everything that you did in Marmara, everything, the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the park, the building, the school, the library, everything had to be great for an 8 and an 80. It's not 8 to 80s, 8 and 80 as an indicator species. Because if it's good for the 8 and it's good for the 80, it's going to be good for everybody, from 0 to over 100. We need to stop building cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic. And we need to build great cities for all. That is the concept of 880 cities. It's simple, but it's powerful. And like Einstein said, we cannot solve the problem by using the same kind of thinking that we used when we created them. So let me give you 8 messages. The first one is, all of us have a magnificent opportunity, but also huge responsibility. Imagine, today we have about 3.5 billion people living in cities around the world. In 40 years, we're going to have about 7 billion. We're going to double. This has never happened before and will never happen again, that 3.5 billion people, and it can be very nice and can be very civilized. I was at a university here on Friday. In the lifetime of those students, in their lifetime, this is going to happen. That means that half of the homes that we will have in the world in 40 years have not been built yet. We're going to do it. Turkey is going to grow by around 20%. Places like Istanbul are going to grow by 33%. So all of this is going to happen in the next 40 years. So if this is going to happen in the next 40 years, let's see what we have done in the last 40. Because if what we've been doing is good, let's just do more of the same. So, but in the last 40, these 8 people have more wealth than half of the people in the world. Imagine the political power, the media power. This is how we've been building cities in the last 40 years. We have been allowing just the supply and demand to take over with very little government intervention. And we have been sending the poor people to the worst places. We've been thinking on cars, and not on people's happiness. And this is the kind of cities that we have been building. We have not solved the issue of mobility through the private car. There is not a single city in the world that has solved mobility through the private car, even though everyone has tried in the last 80 years. However, emerging countries like China and Russia are doing exactly the same things. This is all of Florence, Italy, and one highway intersection at the same scale. Does it make sense? By the way, cities do not decide the what, how many people, but cities do decide the how. The what is the national government, but the how. This is how we've been doing cities in many places, where a child, an older adult, a handicap becomes kind of like a slave to someone that has a car just to go for an ice cream. There are no parks, there are no stores, there are no shops. So the last 40 years is not a good example. So in the next 40 years, we need to do things different. In the next 40 years, we need to improve the cities that we have today, but we also got to create great cities for many, many more people. So it's time to change. And why don't we change in Marmara? Why don't we change in New York or in Bogota? Because change is hard. Change is hard. Doing more of the same is easy. So how do people change? You might have heard that in the US, there's an association of gun owners. No one has been able to do anything except that last year, high school students doing demonstrations and are changing the law. They tell me when I go to Denmark, they say, oh, look at the Danish. What is it that they eat for breakfast? Because they are so different. They're healthy, they ride their bikes. It's not because they are different. They had an energy crisis in the 1970s. And during the energy crisis, they couldn't even use the car on Saturdays and Sundays. So they started to walk and bike. But in Denmark, in the Netherlands, the cars were taking over. In the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, there was no infrastructure, so a lot of children were being killed. In the Netherlands, every time a child was killed, people started doing demonstrations in front of City Hall. And then they changed. So when they tell you Amsterdam was built that way, it wasn't built. They had to change a city for cars into a city for people. Copenhagen, again, was a city for cars, and when they started riding bikes and children were being killed, this was the first bikeway they did in Copenhagen in 1982. And look what happened when they started building infrastructure. And now they're happy. So when you're going to change in Marmara, in any of the 190 municipalities, I want to give you 3 recommendations. First, change is not unanimous. Listen to the people, but at the end you need to make a decision, because people sometimes say, oh, there is some concern. There will always be concern. Second, general interest must prevail over particular. So when you say, are we going to widen the sidewalk? Are we going to do the park? People say, oh, but my business. Say, no, don't talk about your business. Give me the same argument, but frame it wise for the general interest. And number 3 is when you say no to something, you're also saying yes to something else. So, okay, you say, well, no, we don't want parks. Okay, then you are saying, yes, we want more bad quality of air. Yes, we want more obesity, and so on. Everything has consequences. Second, we need to have sustainable mobility. I'll be faster with the others, don't worry. Who came walking today? Anybody came walking? 1, 2. Everybody came walking. I don't see cars in this room. I don't see bicycles. I don't see trains. Every trip begins and ends by walking. We walk to the car. We walk to public transit. Everyone is pedestrian. We all walk. And also, that's how we were created. You know, just like the birds, they fly, or the fish swims, or the deer runs. People, we walk. And when we walk, we are so happy. The kid, you know, one of the happiest days in their lives is when we have a little baby, and for 9 or 10 months the baby has been crawling. All the poor baby sees is the floor, and the baby stands up and takes 1 step, and we say, ah, Sebastian walked. And forever the life of Sebastian will change, because now instead of looking at the floor, he's looking at everything. And we walk for the rest of their lives. Children, when we're walking, we use all our senses. We see the children playing, and we hear the birds singing. We go in front of a coffee shop and we smell the aroma. We walk when we're old. We walk in the summer. We walk in the winter, but we gotta make it safe. And it is not safe. Yesterday, people driving cars killed 741 people walking in one day. It's like 5 planes full of people. 5 planes crashed. Imagine a plane crashed and everybody dies in Turkey, and another one in Australia, another one in the US, another one in Russia. Everyone. Yesterday, and today, another 5, and tomorrow, another 5. It will be a crisis. That's how many pedestrians. That's more than 1 every 2 minutes. They are not accidents. Don't call them accidents. They are incidents, because they can be avoided. For example, people are working on Vision Zero. No one should be dying on the streets. We gotta make walking a priority. And it is not a priority when we do sidewalks like this, or when we allow the cars to go on the sidewalk, or when we don't even do sidewalks. We are telling this woman every day, you are a second-class citizen. Sidewalks are very important. There is nothing as important in Marmara or anywhere in the world than the sidewalk. Because sidewalk is not just to walk. On the street, we move in cars or transit or bikes from point A to point B. But not on sidewalks. Sidewalks are actually more like a family member of the parks. We go to the sidewalk and we sit and we watch people go. We see older people in the sidewalks. We see children going to places. We see families. We see people in the summer. We see people in the winter. We see people going into pedestrian streets and people delivering the mail. Children play traditional sports in the sidewalks. People also catch Pokemons. We wait for public transit. It's something that is really interesting. The sidewalks we go with our children and parents and buy fruits and vegetables, because walking is much more than walking. It's also about democracy. It's where we meet people. We go to church, we go to meet friends, we go shopping. Last month I was working in Buenos Aires. I went to the sidewalk. They even dance tango. And in some places in the middle of the winter they have coffee. And here in Istanbul, I've seen some sidewalks that are nice, but they allow these motorcycles out, or the cars are almost eaten. But others are fantastic. Life happens and people buy and people share. Some people like to talk to each other. I saw some others talking to their cats. People go to pray to the mosque and then leave their shoes in the sidewalk, or people go by and people talk. So sidewalk is the most important infrastructure of any city. And if we're going to improve walkability, we got to lower the speed. All of the streets in Istanbul or in Marmara, on any of the 190 municipalities, the speed, the maximum should be 30. Not in the main street. In the main street might be 40 or 50 or 60. As soon as you turn into a smaller street, it has to be 30. Why 30? Because if you get hit by a car going at 30, there is 5% probability of being killed. At 50 is more than 80%. And there are many studies that show the same numbers. These are not technical issues, these are political. We know that if we do a small island on a crosswalk, we're going to save more than half of the incidents. Why are we still doing crosswalk without an island, when we know that people are going to be killed? Children go on a trip, not all crossing the same line, they need to wait. Older adults and children are the ones that are killed the most in all intersections. So we need to, some people are talking, oh, streets, let's do shared streets. It sounds cute because everybody's going to negotiate with the shared streets. I said, negotiate? You want the people say, oh, let's negotiate, let's look people in the eye. No traffic sign, no traffic lights. I said, do you want this guy to be negotiating with a car? Do you want this child to negotiate? We need always to think of the most vulnerable person. We gotta have sustainable mobility. It's not just walking, also riding bicycles, using public transit, new use of cars. I'm not saying that this is the end of the car industry, but the way we use cars is changing very fast. But if we define our city, if we define the city around cars, what do we get? More cars. And then we have to invite our friends to help us cross the street. And what do? We build more roads. If we try to build roads to solve traffic, it is like trying to put out a fire using gasoline. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But if we define all the municipalities in Marmara around people, we're going to get healthier and happier people. And of course, there are new use of cars. Some people are talking, oh, the automated vehicles, they are driverless, and we're going to have, they do drawings of how beautiful everybody's going to work. And they say, oh, we will not have traffic jams because they will be driverless. Driverless? Do you think that traffic jam is the driver? If we don't change how we live in Marmara, in each one of the 190 municipalities, we need to be compact cities, we need to do more walking, more cycling, more public transit. Otherwise, this is what's going to be the traffic jams. Everybody in driverless cars, but same traffic jam. This is how cities look like before driverless cars. And this is what they're going to look like with driverless cars if we don't change. Yes, we're going to have less parking, but we have many more trips. You don't need to have a driver's license. A 5-year-old can be on a car, a 100-year-old. So there might be more congestion, more sprawl. So it can be great or horrible. It depends up to all of us. We need technology to work for people, not people for technology. So we need to decide, how do we want? Also, we need to ride bicycles. Imagine if all your 190 municipalities, if this is how children went to school. School buses, or older adults to go and do their shopping. You know, this is Copenhagen. You can be as good as Copenhagen from the point of view of walking, or the point of view of cycling. And not this one, but this last month's magazine, the magazine that your association publishes, has a section on Copenhagen. That's how people go places. Everybody goes to work, and they don't have this magnificent weather that you have in Turkey. In Copenhagen, in the winter is cold, and the summer is hot, and it rains all year round. It rains all the time. 41% of the trips are done on bicycles. 41, and it's not because they are poor. They are one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And they're not happy with 41. They want to go to 50%. And men don't need shirts in the summer, or women don't need special shoes. But if we want to improve bikeability in any of the cities, it's not about painting lines on the pavement or putting up signs. It's not about bicycle parking. That doesn't improve, or maps or things like that. It's not about bicycle sharing. People always have bike share. The problem is not the bicycle. The problem is where to ride the bicycle. This is like getting the saddle before the horse. So the only two things that will get more people cycling is to lower the speed in all the residential areas and to develop a network of protected bikeways. So everything I said about 30K for walking is same for cycling. But we also need the a minimum grid. What is a minimum grid of AAAs? For all ages and abilities. It's not for the 20 to 15 spandex. And nothing as important as connectivity. We need to connect origins and destinations. And we need to think of the daytime and nighttime and create these really nice facilities. This is Paris, this is New York, don't just paint the line. It's not going to work, a painted line. Get that painted line and enhance. Put at least some plastic bollards if you're going to make it temporary. Or make physical separations. People that even have this horrible weather. It's about that. This is why people bike in Copenhagen, because there is connectivity from anywhere to anywhere. It's like a power grid, a water grid, a bicycle grid. And let's keep in mind, when you do bike infrastructure in Marmara, keep in mind, if it's not safe for an 8-year-old, it's nothing. Don't call it anything. Don't call it a bikeway, because it's nothing. We need to make it safe for everybody. This is who we should be having in mind. That 3, 4, 5, 8-year-olds, they have to be our indicator on everything that we do in the cities. And if you want to call the attention of the cities, maybe do 100 meters, 1 block of protected bikeway, and have decision makers ride their bike here and then ride another 100 on the other side with nothing, and they will see the difference. And if we're going to put public transit, one of my brothers is mayor of Bogota 2 years ago, and he says the civilized city is not the one where the poor people have cars. It's the one where the rich use public transit. We need to have quality transit for everybody. It's not for the poor. Something that he did to shake people up. 1 day a year, no cars. Imagine in any of the municipalities. It can be Istanbul, or it can be the municipality of 2,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people. No cars. From 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. It's a day to think. What is the role of the car? What is the role of mobility? How are we going to move? By the way, the people from Brussels were in Bogota. They loved it. And last Sunday, a week from yesterday, this is what Brussels looked like. This is what Paris looked like. 1 day a year, no cars in Paris. None. Not one road or two. 1 day a year is no cars to think. Of course, we do need public transit. Sometimes it can be buses. Sometimes it can be trains. Sometimes it's marketing. For example, sometimes I go to the cities and I see this horrible. We need to dignify the transit user. We don't have our cars like this. Why are we going to do the buses like this? Tell the people of Istanbul, I've seen some of the trains, don't do this horrible thing. Have advertising, but don't cover the windows. Especially don't cover the windows with advertising for cars, because then there's a lot of pain. I don't see cars promoting public transit, so why are we going to use public transit to promote cars? And if we do a bus station, the children, he's not thinking about children. Part of it is marketing. You know, I was working in a municipality and the mayor said people didn't like the buses. So he got the buses, he put a nose, he covered the wheels, and now they look like trains. So part of it is marketing. Part of it is the mobility math. We don't have enough space. So do we want one of these, or do we want 140 of those? Do we want one of these, or we want 145 of those? So very clearly, walking, cycling, transit takes a lot less space. Number 3, Marmara, please be bold. Do things. I know so everyone is doing something, but some are doing it at the speed of the turtle. And they say, oh, we might be slow, but we're better than you. Of course, all of you will find municipalities that are worse. But if you compare yourself with municipalities that are worse, eventually you're going to look like those. So remember, please, no complacency or myth of excellence. It's about retaining and attracting your best people. Last month, I was in Oslo. I was with this mayor, 67-year-old. This is her Minister of Transportation, 30-year-old, and she is making Oslo downtown pedestrian, all pedestrian as of next year. But this is Barcelona. It's a city that is good for walking. But they say when cities are good, they don't become complacent. They say we're going to be better. So Barcelona said we're going to improve walkability. Not 1%, not 10%, 66%. You know, they have this nice grid. They say we're going to improve 66. What are they going to do? All of the streets now are good, okay, for walking, for cycling, for cars. They say, okay, now it's going to be for everybody. They're going to pedestrian, pedestrian. Everybody, pedestrian, pedestrian. So they're going to increase through these super blocks. If you had told anyone in New York that Times Square was going to be pedestrian, they would have thought you were crazy. Well, they made it pedestrian. And now people are doing yoga or Tai Chi or other things. By the way, today, even 7 years later, 26% of the people are against it. You have so much better weather in Turkey that you could have much better crosswalks than they. Look at the crosswalks in New York. This is the city Malmo that I said it had to reinvent themselves in 2 years. And how to do it. And they have also this horrible weather. So, we need to have parks and park systems. Let me give you some symptoms of good parks and public spaces, because we really hear a lot when we listen and we see when we observe. One symptom in any of your municipalities is good places to sit. You need good places to sit. This guy needed 5 chairs to be happy. His feet, his Big Mac. In a bench, he would not have been as happy. Sometimes people see, monkey does. No, sometimes it's people see and people do. We don't put benches on the sidewalks. And we put nails so the young people won't sit. This person couldn't find a bench and had to sit in his briefcase, while his friend actually fainted. And his wife is sitting on their baby. But when you have nice places to sit, it's magical. In the middle of the winter, people go and they sit in movable chairs. They don't sit facing each other. They sit facing others. It starts to rain and people won't even move. I saw here in Istanbul these people talking, and it was kind of ironic because I saw these guys sitting on the bollard, and here there were like 10 chairs. But this also reminds me that part of this is about sociability. Also, if you see people talking to each other, that is also a good symptom. Another symptom is good diversity. When you see children, you see youth, you see older adults. When you see affection, it's another symptom. You are affectionate, but you feel at ease. Another symptom is high proportion of women. Women are more selective. If it's not safe and clean, they won't go. But those are symptoms. Some characteristics of parks. Management. One of the biggest problems of cities is they don't manage the parks and the public space. They think management is the same as maintenance. No. Maintenance is only about 20% of management. Picking up the garbage, cutting the grass. No. Management is how to have activities, grandparents and grandchildren. How to have uses and activities. Here people walking and running and cycling and playing chess and having lunch and reading books. Management is about having volunteers by giving them the tools. Management is about engaging the citizens as the citizens before, during, after. Management is about having resources. Management is about having equity throughout the city and having good fit with the city so that not all parks are the same. Management is about safety, but not like in London, England, that I saw this sign, beware of the thieves. This is like an invitation to the thieves of the city. You need a lot of police in the parks when they are empty. You don't need police when they are full. Yesterday when walking by some parks, there were lots of people. So the cheapest, the less expensive way to have safety in parks is to have uses and activities. I go to cities and sometimes it seems easier to find the millions to do the parks than the thousands to make them work. You say, oh, let's do a movie night. Oh, we don't have money. Let's do a walking group. We don't have money. But to build the park, they do. No, it's about uses and all year round, regardless of the season, and we need to have people at all times. Do we need large parks or small parks in your municipalities? You need both. Both, because they satisfy very different needs. We need a small neighborhood park so that is where we meet the neighbors. We develop solidarity. It's also good for safety, because if we know the neighbors and something is happening, everybody goes out to help. If I don't know anybody, I shut down the door and stay inside. So we need the small parks, but we cannot play football there, so we need medium-sized parks. And we cannot go canoeing, so we need large parks, such as the linear park along the Bosphorus. So we need a citywide park system with small, with medium, with large. And we need resources. 5, everybody learns from everybody. That's why Marmara is so great. But you might be saying, oh, Gil, you are showing all these examples from other countries. In Marmara, we're different. We have nothing in common with Copenhagen or New York. Marmara municipalities, we are unique. I know you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else. This is not about copying and pasting, like on the computer. On the computer we copy and paste. Each one of the municipalities in your association can learn from each other. But it's not about copying, it is about adapting. You can adapt both what to do and also what not to do. You can adapt for things that worked and things that didn't work, because every one of the municipalities, as well as with the rest of the world, you can learn from each other. Even a small one. Look at this municipality, 5,000 people. They have 5,000 people and 2 polar bears. I went there, and the week before I had been working in Google, and Google invited me there, so I showed them some photos of the things I saw in Google, their restaurants and their campus, their autonomous vehicles, and then they had also all of these drones and things. But one of the things someone from a high school liked were the Google bicycles. So this is what can happen in a municipality of 5,000 people, or any municipality. And they said, oh my God, I love those bicycles. Why don't we do a bike sharing system? And people say, where are you going to get the bikes? And they say, oh, let's go to the police. There are many bicycles that have been lost and found, and no one has claimed. So they went to the police, they got the bicycles that they were lost and found, they brought them to the high school, they fixed them, they painted them like the Google bikes, and they created a bike share system. And now 85% of the population of 5,000, a city of 5,000 people, they got a bike share. So it's about being active. I know you don't have this horrible weather, but this physical education teacher, she saw that each year fewer and fewer kids were walking to school. She said, why don't you walk to school? Because they were afraid of the cars. So when the kids were home on vacation, they came back and she was dressed up as a pilot. She shut down the parking lot. And then at -24, and the kids started to walk, and the kids started to bike. We need hundreds of Anfentos, all of you, because part of it is infrastructure, but part of it is programs. It's both hardware and software. In Toronto, cities cannot continue to grow. We need to, Toronto is going to grow by 50%. So the provincial said, we are going to put a green belt. No one can grow. All of the 50% growth has to be in the existing footprint. Rotterdam was turned down during the Second World War and built around cars. Look what they have done in the last 8 years. Look at this beautiful bike parking. It's not hard. What if you tell people, oh, please, cars, give us one side of the street. And look how. You want to live in this city or you want to live in this street? And it's just an issue of moving the cars. Here they're going to do a building, maybe in 5, in 10, in 20 years. So they said, in the meantime, let's not just put this. Let's open it up and do a small park. So this is how cities can be transforming themselves around the world. This city owns 200,000 people, like many of the municipalities of Marmara. They did a transportation plan of everybody walking, cycling, transit, cars, thinking of going to school, thinking of going to work. Lots of communication with the community through internet. Anytime there were more than 5,000 cars, they created a physical separation. Always counting, putting places to fix, nice signage. It's not that hard. Lockers and restrooms, even bicycle parking on the ground in a small community. Many pedestrian streets. In the pedestrian streets, you leave your bike out or you walk your bike. And in front of the schools, in many places in the world, in front of the schools, we put 30 kilometers maximum. No, here in front of the school is 0 kilometers. There are no cars from 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. And they put these games, ping pong tables and things so that the children can come and play. So it's about creating a city that is nice for everybody. 6, let's focus on the benefits. This is not about parks or streets, it's not about walking, it's about the benefits. It's about creating in Marmara every municipality and a city for all people. This is about improving the culture and the education, recreation and environment. You need to have an argument for each one, because people say, how do I convince my decision makers? Well, you convince your decision makers if you have different arguments, different benefits. For example, for health, is this what the future looks like? The issue of obesity is something really, it's not how people look, it's that obesity has to do with heart attacks, respiratory problems, anxiety, depression. In Turkey, 1 in 3 people are obese. And it hasn't been like this in the last 25 years, it has doubled. So of course you gotta work in the school lunches, having farmers markets all over the place, having gardens, urban gardening, so that the children will learn that the tomatoes don't come out of a factory. But of course also being active. It's not about doing marathons. Children just need to be active 60 minutes a day. And adults, 30 minutes. I saw through the window that there is that bridge that has a train station in the middle. That is really nice, because if you need to do 30 minutes a day, you take the station, you get there. You walk 15 minutes to go to work. In the afternoon, you work another 15 minutes to go to the station, and you do your 30 minutes a day. The only way to be physically active, the whole population, is walking or cycling as a normal part of everyday life. It's not about playing football, you play once or twice a week. It's not about going to the gym once or twice. We need people to be physically active 5 or more days a week. And of course, all of this is going to be great for physical health, but there is no health without mental health. For example, one big issue today is loneliness. Even in cities of 15 million people, people are very lonely. In the UK, in England, they created the Ministry of Loneliness 6 months ago. You know, when people are lonely, 29% more probability of heart disease, 32% more of stroke, twice the possibility of having dementia. Depression is the world's leading cause of disability. One of the issues to solve, is contact with nature. It's going to improve our mood, our cognitive attention. So when you are having nature all over the municipalities of Marmara, it's because of this. If our neighborhoods are green, we're going to lower the anxiety and the stress. So we really need nature everywhere. We need nature at home. We need it at school, at work. Everywhere. It can be in the winter, it can be in the summer. So it's not just because it looks nice, it's not because I'm going to be green. No, it's because it's also going to be good for our health, for our physical health, for our mental health, for our emotional health. And it's something that is totally doable. And children love nature, so it has to be totally interwoven. Also because more people go to the parks, but empty parks have fewer benefits. So we need to have parks where people are active, and that has to become a priority everywhere. In every one of the 190 municipalities, we need to put nature everywhere. 7, communities, the experts. Ask the community, what do they want? Listen to the community. It's not about this, oh, let's do yoga, oh, let's do more yoga. No, not everybody wants to do yoga. Some want to have a fire pit. Some want pizza ovens. Some want to paint. Listen to the citizens, and listen to the children, to the older adults, and there are going to be so many wonderful ideas. We do lots of workshops with children, even simple ones, as asking them to draw, what do you want your community to look like? And they start doing drawings. Involve the children, not because they are the future. It's because if we educate the children very, very well, as Jamie Lerner said, the former mayor of Curitiba, we educate children very, very, they go home and they educate their parents. For example, this kid is only 13 and he wrote here, I want few cars, I want more people walking, more people cycling. And then he didn't write, but he drew an area for people walking, for cyclists, for buses, for cars. He doesn't know that we walk at 5 kilometers an hour, but he knows that if we mix pedestrians and cyclists, the pedestrian gets injured. If we mix cyclists and cars, the cyclists, and then he drew public parks and low buildings with street level activity. You know, if we were to build communities in any municipality in Marmara like this, they would be really nice communities. And so it's not really rocket science. Last week I was in Gothenburg, and I went with the heads of parks and planning and transportation, and we went to an area where they are going to do their new developments. Here's a brand new area that is industrial. It's going to be, these are children. They are bringing children for 1 year to play, but they are not only playing. The planners are listening, are watching, and are testing ideas to see what is it that children want. Children 0 to 5, look at these little kids. They don't know it, but they're telling the city what is it that they want and how would they like their parks. So I'll go to the last message. We need to be guardian angels of the gentle majority. Who's the gentle majority? The children, the older adults, the poor. We do public meetings and the children are sleeping. Or the older adults also. The poor have 2 and 3 jobs, they don't go to public meetings. So when we evaluate any community of any size, let's evaluate communities by how do we treat the most vulnerable. The children, the older adults, and the poor. Let me give you an idea for each one. Children. In Marmara, we need to have playability everywhere. Everywhere. Imagine we come out and we're on the sidewalk and we have a swing. We're waiting for public transit and there's more parquet. It's not about money. A lot of this doesn't cost a lot of money. It's about being a little bit proactive, letting our minds go, being a little bit more free to do whatever we want. The children must be our top priority. Children of all ages. We see it in their faces. We see their smile. For children, and people will say, oh, it's nice because playing is fun and games. Yeah, it's fun and games, but it's much more than that. Playing is how children learn. Playing is how children develop their muscle strength, their cognitive thinking, the capacity to socialize, to friendship, to coordinate. That's how they develop their sense of belonging. We need to have playability in Marmara municipalities everywhere. By the way, what is the favorite toy of a child? Another child. And then they have fun. These are going to be the future engineers. And it's totally doable. So in every community in Marmara, every one of the 190 municipalities, you're going to have parks or play areas within a short walk. Now, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, do it. Let's build parks everywhere. And most important, the children under 5. For example, Bernard Van Leer Foundation, that is helping organize this meeting, has a magnificent program called Urban 95. What is Urban 95? What does a city look like? From 95 centimeters. 95 centimeters is the average height of a 3-year-old. So what does a city look like? We need to change. Maybe sometimes when we're on the street, we could even do sometimes simple. Have a stick, put a pair of glasses on the stick at 95 centimeters, and then take a look at the city from 95 centimeters. It's going to be when you go on the sidewalk, when you go in the park. Get all the decision makers in your city to do something simple as that, and you will see how it can be transformative. When we start thinking, we know that the first 1,000 days in the life of a child are the most important. Since the mother is pregnant, and then the first 2, 3 years, but 0 to 5 is absolutely critical. But we are not doing enough. I've got to many municipalities and I see parks and parks and parks, nothing for children under 5. People say, oh, let's put a swing and let's put no, how about the under 5? It's not the same park for the child that is 3-year-olds than for the one that is 8-year-old than that is 13-year-old. It's going to be totally different. I'm very happy that Marmara, the association, is going to develop links with Bernard Van Leer on this. And if we don't have parks, let's think what is public. The streets, the sidewalks, the libraries, the schools. Look, New York went to they didn't have a lot of places without playgrounds for children. So they went to the schools. This is horrible. This is what in America have in most schools for playground. So they say, no, we'll do a real playground if and only if you make it a school park. That after 4 p.m. you open it to the community on Saturdays, Sundays. And look what they did with beautiful green roofs. Why so much green? Because when children play in green, they reduce the attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. But they didn't do just 1 or 2. In New York, they have done 224 of these. So they have increased by 25% the playgrounds without buying 1 centimeter of land. So we need to have in all our municipalities, if there are 5,000 people or 100,000 or 14 million, we need school parks, library parks, sidewalk parks, street parks. This is Copenhagen. All of these are schools, and that is the playground. Same thing during the school hours for the school, after school hours for the community. And if we don't have a school, let's take over a street and make it a play street. So this is totally doable. And if children have it within walking distance, older adults, we're living longer, so much longer. It's so important that the association works in older adults also, not only in children. The people that have ever lived to 65, in the history of humanity, the people that have lived to 65, half are alive today, half. This is something very new. And the population of 65 are going to double, and the population of 80 are going to quadruple, and people are having fun. People are not even talking about retirement, but it's how to be re-engaged. I think the biggest waste of resource that we have in Marmara, in all 190 communities, and everywhere in the world, is the older adults. People retire and we cross them out, as if they had died. Except that they have 20, 30, 40 years left. And they are healthier, and they are wealthier, and they have knowledge, and they have experience. And they, for example, the universities, they are hungry of knowledge. They want to learn about music and history and science. In the universities, 20, 30% of the courses should be for older adults. This is a fantastic resource. Older adults could be teaching languages to the refugees. They could be tutoring kids in the elementary schools. They could be doing activities for other older adults in the parks, in the public spaces. This is new. Look, if we had been born in Turkey 150 years ago, this is the life expectancy. 150 years ago, the life expectancy in Turkey was 35. So most of us would be dead by now. Now, it's almost 80 years old. In only 150 years, it went from 35 to almost 80, more than double. We have learned how to survive. But when we got all of these issues of climate change and public health and so on, we need to learn how to live. And I think that this association of Marmara, part of it is about that, how to live. Because a lot of this is about the built environment. So how are we going to build? Older adults are terrified of losing their driver's license, almost as much as when they are told they have cancer. Not because older adults love cars, it's because they love mobility. So we need to create cities that are great for everybody, young and old. For example, I love this park, not because it has a beautiful tree, but because it has a nice area for older adults, for grandparents. So making the link of children and grandparents, we gotta have the uses and the activities in the park, and it is absolutely critical. For example, every park should have walking path. The most important infrastructure of any park of any size is having a walking path. It has the best cost benefit of any. People like to go, and all you have your walking path. It can be small. It can be 300 meters. It can be 3 kilometers. It can be 5 kilometers. This is a small park, and it has a small. So the grandfather or grandmother bring the grandchild. They're playing, and in the meantime, they're walking and they're doing physical activity. So activities and having intergenerational. We need to strengthen that link of grandparents and grandchildren. Many grandparents are taking care of their grandchildren. We need to make the parks and the public spaces nice for both, so that they will go and they will enjoy that kind of multi-generational. And these are some of the activities. So all of this is doable. And also the poor, the 3 priorities of the gentle majority. I'm talking about equity. I'm not talking about equality. Someone did this cartoon that is a nice definition, said this is equality. No, some people are starting so far behind that some might not need any box. Others might need 2 and 3 boxes. And someone said, okay, this is equity, this is equality, okay, this is reality. But in Marmara, maybe you need to think outside the box. Maybe you gotta see things differently. Maybe it's not moving boxes. Maybe it's taking down the wall, because we have not been doing very well. Look for children around the world. The U.S., the wealthiest country in the world, the U.S., 1 out of 5 children live in poverty. Places like South Korea, 1 out of 14. Denmark is 1 out of 37. From the point of view of mobility, the people that use cars as mobility are spending 20% of their income on mobility. 20. They could be spending only 5% if they walked and bike and use public transit. So there is nothing that government could do to improve that, allowing people to downsize and good for the community. It's about how do we want to live. So I just want to end by saying, let's think outside the box. All of this that I mentioned is not technical. It's not financial. It's political, but with a big P, because everybody has to participate. Political, but we need everybody to participate. We need to create alliances. Alliances is like a three-legged stool. One of the legs are the elected officials at the city level, at the national level. The other leg is the public sector staff. But public sector not from just urban planning. Get urban planning, but also transportation, public health, environment, education, all the public sector. And the third leg is the community. The activists, the media, the universities, the business community. How to get all three legs together? What is the glue to get is developing a sense of urgency. Either because your population is growing too much, or either because there is big issues of health, or because there is big problems of economic development. Once you have a sense of urgency, then you develop a shared vision for your municipality. But you need vision, but you also need action. Because some municipalities develop a vision, but they don't do anything. So they become frustrated. Because they know what needs to be done, but they don't do it. Others, the opposite. They do things here, but there's no vision. So it's like chaos. But if you develop vision and you develop action, then you're going to be able to create vibrant and healthy communities in Turkey. And you're going to be able to move from talking to doing. And they will tell you in municipality, oh, we're doing. Yes, you're doing, but you're going to do more, and you're going to do it faster. So Marmara, let's do it. Now. Thank you.